I think we're going to get started. We're going to have one less panelist because Bobby has to go run to take care of another business. But I promise we have a great panel nonetheless that we kind of scoped it out here. I always like to see where people are traveling from. So how are you guys, local? Or has anyone come from an area? No? Everyone's local? Yeah. Where are you from? Alabama. Anyone beat Alabama? No? Arlington. I came from Virginia, but yeah, not too bad. So looking at collecting for the past 30 years, this panel is sort of going to look at what has been the trend, what have we seen, where is it going, particularly with Star Wars, and looking at other lines as sort of lessons learned. I always look at collecting as parallels to sports, and I know it's kind of a weird thought to think, but if you think about anyone that is a huge fan of sports, a mega fan, they're buying jerseys, they're buying salt and pepper shakers, they're buying flags, they're buying statues, they're buying Nerf, they're buying action figures, whatever, to connect to the franchise, to connect to their team. And that's kind of how I look at Star Wars. We are Team Star Wars. This is the way we connect to our franchise. We can't turn on the TV and watch, a Star Wars game every Sunday, Monday, and Thursday. It's not the same. I mean, we can watch it anytime we want, honestly, but it is not the same as the weekly occurring sports matches on either football, baseball, etc. So collecting is our way of supporting and connecting with our team, and that's what this panel is about. It's about the trends in collecting and making those connections. So we're going to discuss basically where we're going and where have we learned from other licenses. And I want to say, and I wish Bobby was here to back me up on this, I think Star Wars might be the longest continuous line of action figures and toys. I thought maybe the other one could have been Transformers, and I know he's a Transformers expert, but I think Transformers stopped in the early 90s for a few years, whereas... Was that?
Almost anything had.
Yeah.
G.I. Joe is older, but had a massive interruption.
It had a massive interruption, and I want to say Star Wars started in 95, and it had no interruption since it started in 95. So I think it's been almost 30 solid years of uninterrupted action figures in the line, not to mention all the other collectibles that are out there. But as far as action figures go, I want to say I think it's Star Wars. I haven't been able to find anything that meets 30 years uninterrupted. So it's quite impressive in that aspect. So one trend I'm going to begin with is the classic or retro aesthetic. And that has been just emergent, not just in Star Wars, but in a lot of lines lately. And it's doing very well. And I think that is here to stay. 2017 is when we had the 40th anniversary of Star Wars. We saw Hasbro announce the retro line at New York Toy Fair that year. In the beginning, it was just a Target exclusive. And the problem was they didn't produce a whole lot, which was a major issue because they sold out almost initially on pre-order. Some of them made it to the stores, but they had to get another order out later in the year. It took a long time. I want to say it was almost another year before those finally hit shelves, and they discovered that they had gold. People were going out of their way to get the figures on the old Kenner card backs again, and now it's a main line, essentially. The retro collection is a main line of Star Wars. And it wasn't just that. I mean, we're seeing Transformers with their classic re-releases at Walmart. We're seeing Mattel with the classic Masters of the Universe. We're seeing Playmates with their classic Ninja Turtles. Hasbro is doing it with Marvel Legends in the retro. NECA is packaging things in Alien, for example, in Kenner packaging. 3-0 did the original Transformers colors of its figures. Hasbro Ghostbusters, you can see some on the floor over there with the original Kenner aesthetic in the packaging. So, and this is a trend that is not going to stop. And it seems to be outperforming modern figures in a lot of these lines too, which is kind of fascinating. So collectors definitely want to recapture some of this, and it's a cheaper way of getting that old look without having to pay $500 for a Kenner figure. So I think it's a trend that's going to continue. And we're seeing sort of this bleed over into other lines. For example, the Black Series, the Kenner repaints, and how crazy those have been. Everyone recalls Kenner Boba Fett, and I think that's one of the highest commanding prices in the secondary market for the Kenner repaint so far. But it's something that's going to continue as well because we just got a whole bunch of those recently. I don't know, maybe someone could tell me the most recent one. I think it might be, I'm sorry? For the repaints in the Black Series? Okay, so for the repaints in the Black Series, I want to say the most recent was Admiral Akbar, I think, with the 40th anniversary Return of the Jedi line. So I think we're going to see more. I don't think that was the end of it. Possibly now that we have like 25th of Phantom Menace and stuff like that, we might see those bleed over into episode 1 and 2. So maybe we'll see older repaints of. Instead, we did see card backs for the 99 for the Phantom Menace just a couple of years ago. So who knows? But also in the vintage collection, we've seen those repaints of figures. I think we have something close to one of them we're handing out today in the panel. We have the comic style, but there was also a vintage Kenner style Boba Fett. So it's just going to continue and expand. And I think where this is going is creatures, vehicles, and playsets. Now, nothing has been announced yet, but it only makes sense that the next logical leap is we could see a repackaged Dewback. We could see a repackaged Landspeeder. But I think it's going to continue that trend where they're producing figures that have never been produced before. We might finally get a Bantha in a vintage style or something along those lines. It's what fans are looking for. I don't know what Hasbro's plans are. I can't say that. Neither can they until they officially reveal them. But I think that's the trend, and that's where it's heading in that respect. Might we see some really fun ones? If I had to put money on it, I'm thinking since we have the 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith next year, maybe we'll see a Black Series version of that Volcano Vader, if anyone remembers that. It was a Target exclusive. Very fun packaging. I mean, even the card invitation to get one was fun. So I could see that being either Comic-Con or some other exclusive next year from Hasbro of having that come back, but in a Black Series line, same packaging, same style, etc. So I think that's a fun trend that's going to continue moving forward. Another trend I want to talk about is the bridging of the technology gap. Now, a lot of companies have tried to take toys and integrate some kind of video game or AR or VR aspect to them. We see this either through barcodes you scan on a product, some kind of augmented reality aspect. If you didn't know, your badges or the door panels, if you download the app, you can see the schedules appear on them through AR. Some of the cards that we have in the signing hall, if you take your AR app to them, they actually start moving. It's really kind of fascinating. Or they play scenes that the characters were in the film. Go check it out. It's really cool for the signers. They're different little things, do things. But it's something that Toys to Screen has been a sort of a aspiration for a lot of companies to bridge that gap to stay relevant, because a lot of product is shifting more to digital, and the upcoming and current generations tend to prefer more digital to physical toys. And I know that because I have 2 sets of kids in different generations, and it's more and more digital now. So things like Skylanders, Disney Infinity tried to do that. They did not do very well in the end, and I think it might have just been a production issue where they ended up Funko popping it, and they made more than people were just willing to have, and it ended up killing those lines. But for a while, they kind of found that medium between an interesting toy and a on-screen representation. And Disney, to their credit, did try to resurrect the Infinity by making the figures part of their, I think it's Toy Box was the series that they do at the Disney stores, and they're still pretty cool. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about them, but I really enjoyed that sort of fun style that they had for those figures. I mean, I remember all the way back, this isn't a new trend, this was back in like the late 80s as well, Captain Power. Does anyone remember Captain Power? VHS, essentially you would hold it up to those old CRT televisions, and they had that light effect that would kick into the ship or the base you had, and it would make it explode in your hand. So it interacted with that video. You put that VHS video on, and you could do a little shoot with the gun, and it would shoot back and make your ship explode. So that's a very early concept, and it's something that I think a lot of toy producers are trying to recapture, particularly with Star Wars. Hasbro, for example, tried to do this with Comtech. I don't know if you guys remember Comtech. That launched, I want to say 99 or 98. Comtech launched just before the prequel movie started, and they tried to pitch that. It's like the next great thing. You could hear your toys talk. Questionable voice recordings on a lot of those. I think Han was the worst one, in my opinion. The Jawa worked, but again, it's just a bunch of nonsense sounds, so it's not hard to recreate that. The Millennium Falcon CD-ROM playset, which I actually saw one in there on the vendor floor, and I haven't seen that for like a decade. Basically, you would strap that to your keyboard, you pop in the disc, and the different controls would push down different keys underneath. So it's, essentially just operating it like you would any computer game. But it was cool. So you pull the hyperdrive, it would go into hyperdrive. You push the fire button, it would fire. And you had your toy sitting in there, and it was a great big cockpit. And you could put multiple figures in there. So it's kind of the way that they try to bridge that technology gap, but it didn't catch on. And I think it's always too gimmicky. I don't have a solution, but I don't think it's going to stop. I think producers are still going to try to bridge that gap, but I think augmented reality might be the happy medium where you could have something and be able to scan like the back of a card, and it builds a display for the figure to stand in or sit in, or a little world. Just if they could find a way to connect that with action figure photography, I think that's where it would pick up, because that is a big trend with collectors, is displaying figures in a way that they could photograph them with great sets and great lighting and whatnot. And if you had a way to introduce a little augmented reality background to it, where you could be on a Mustafar or you could be on Tatooine or whatnot with the figure, I think that might be the happy medium. But I don't think that most people will go for any other kind of technology trend. It's just a fad that just doesn't seem to really land with collectors. And I think because part of it is it's taking away from the fun. It's just too busy. The other trend I want to bring up here is toys to props. Essentially, role play has always been a massive part of Star Wars and a part of a lot of fandoms, all the way back to the original line from Kenner in the 70s. And I think the first ever Star Wars collectible was a Darth Vader belt and gun set from Canada. It's very hard to track down, but before the action figures hit the stores, they were putting out all sorts of licensed merchandise. And yeah, I know how that sounds, but Darth Vader had a blaster in this set. It was a very basic set for role play for kids. I think there was a couple of them done, like one for Stormtrooper, one for Darth Vader, one for Luke, and it was just a kind of like a Batman utility belt with a gun and I think a mask. But example right there, role playing was the earliest Star Wars toys. Now we're seeing this back with the electronics and the Nerf guns. They're sort of taking that to a new level. The premium deco on the Black Series helmets, and I think they're doing pretty well. Otherwise, they wouldn't be making so many of them. But I think it's a demand will remain on this and will expand. I'm thinking where they're missing out on is more equipment. I mean, if you look at the 501st, they're building all sorts of armor. They're building all sorts of accessories. And Hasbro is not doing that. They could easily put out a set of gauntlets for Mandalorians, and you could have like 30 different versions of those. And I think people would love that, to pair that with the helmet. I mean, I don't expect them to put out a full set of armor because other people have licenses on that. Duo Novo has a license on that, so I don't know if they could compete with it. But they are missing out on other role play elements. I'm sure people would like little boxes to put on their belts, or little Imperial comm units. I mean, that's a pretty easy thing to do and make that Bluetooth syncable or something. So I think that is where we're missing out on, and that's where the trend might be moving toward the future, is more little accessories. If you look at what Hasbro has done for Ghostbusters, all they're doing is building accessories. I mean, their most recent HasLab was the trap and the PKE meter. So it's easily something they could do in a HasLab if they can't mass produce it. And it's something that we'd love to see moving forward. The last major trend I want to talk to is what we need to see return to the lines, and what kind of scares me about in the future. So if you think about what is the most important thing in a line to collecting, let me just poll everybody here. What do you think is most important about collecting? Children's interest. Availability. Availability. Okay. I think that all plays into one bigger theme I was thinking, and it's fun. It needs to be fun. When you start taking the fun out of it, that's when it dies. You can't be monotonous. You can't be repetitive. When we get to the point where we have Darth Vader Bespin breakfast as a figure, I think we lose out. You're laughing, but there actually is a Darth Vader Bespin breakfast figure. He came in a box set for the Betrayal at Bespin. I think that was the Legacy collection, or oh no, I'm sorry, it was 30th anniversary collection in 2007. But he wasn't called Darth Vader Bespin brunch. But it's getting at my point. Like people want to see, they want the world to build. They want a little bit of expansion. They want something different. I know Hasbro, we talked to them 100 times. They've always said they're not going to invest too heavily in background aliens unless they could put it out in the set. And I think that's great. If you saw the most recent one, that was the Jabba's Court Denizens, they put out people we would never have gotten by themselves. So definitely more of that to help us build that world. Getting a little adventurous into playsets, and they've had mixed results. They've done bad with the Tantive 4 hallway, from what I understand, the Bespin carbon freezing chamber that required you to buy 2 of them just to have one. I think modular is definitely a way to go, but it needs to be modular in the sense that you let people decide what they want to do with it. For example, selling Death Star walls in a hallway. I could buy 30 of those. I could build a Death Star, or I could buy just 2 if I just want to display 2. But it's less constrained and it's more universal than what they've been doing to date. Like the Bespin chamber was very restrictive. So things like that. I mean, things like just having Tatooine street scenes, stuff that really, again, ties into other aspects. Like we were talking about the action figure photography. Street scenes would be great if I could just buy a couple of those. So thinking a little bit more into world building and less onto a constrained sort of set for action figures. So I think more sets again, like we were talking about on the aliens, getting back to that, more heroes, more support, but getting away. The core ones are important. I agree with you on that, and making those available. But if I'm going to sell another Luke, I want to see 3 other guys that I haven't gotten yet along with it. It can't just be Luke. It can't be Darth Vader Bespin breakfast. It has to be a little bit more mixed into there. And it's fine if they want to move those core characters. They need more diversity in the line. So that is what we're seeing in terms of where the lines are heading. But I'd love to hear ideas from people as well, because we do have opportunities to talk to Hasbro. We are going to be seeing them next month. The big thing we're going to talk about with them is the Cantina. I don't know who's backed it in here. All right, just about everyone. I backed it myself. I backed it at the deluxe level. And it gets back to my question on world building. The biggest flaw that I saw missing from it, they just spent all this time on tooling and advertising a great package of Cantina Band members. Who has seen any production photos of the Cantina Band in the Cantina? Nobody, because they didn't. That's exactly my point on the disconnect there of that world building. They spent all that time. They talked about how they tooled all these guys brand new, included every accurate instrument with them. They didn't set a stage in the Cantina that they're building for the Cantina. So it's a big question I want to have if there's a disconnect. They did make it modular, though. So there is a potential that you could always sell a stage and swap it out. But, if we're getting the Cantina, that should sort of be sort of a highlight of the Cantina, is having a lit band stage or something. So just an example of that. But I'd love to hear. It was within a booth, yes.
So now they get to the point with the scene of the band that was filmed in a different film location. If you'd have created the cantina with the bandstand, there would have been uproar in the fact that there wasn't a stand for it. So they were in a bit of a catch-22 situation there, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that aspect. But my point is, if you design these figures, you should probably design a way to position them into the setting you have. So maybe their solution will be a future swappable section for it. I don't know how they're going to fit if you try to fit them into the booth right now. I haven't seen it. They might have it on display next month, so we'll get to check that out. But you do raise a valid point of that. But I think they need to come up with some kind of, or at least address it. I don't think it's very hard to say, hey, when we were thinking of this process, we wanted to be accurate to the screen, or we wanted to be accurate to whatever, but our solution is X. Or we know we just sold a $90 Cantina Band member set, so this is what we're thinking. So just something, or even in the promotional photos, display the band somewhere, or you just have these sets. Just helps you think about it a little bit more. But just an example there. So I would like to take, I'm not sure how much time we have. We're doing good on time. We have at least 20 minutes. I want to do giveaways, but I want to hear some feedback because I want to take these to questions to Hasbro. I want to collect questions for when we go speak with Hasbro. So if you have questions on upcoming products or things you'd want to see, tell me, and I am writing them down, and we were going to take them next month to Hasbro.
I'd really like to know your thoughts on, actually, I can just kind of, I'm a theater person. My question is, I'd like to know your thoughts on the Build-A-Figure concept as far as action figures. Do you love it because it's the opportunity to get something obscure, or do you hate it because you have to buy somebody for the third time just to get somebody else's left leg?
I have mixed feelings about it. I do love it because of the ability to get somebody obscure. And my qualms with it aren't necessarily about buying it to get someone's left leg. It's just sometimes things just don't fit right. And I saw it even more in the Adventure series. I don't know how many people collected that, but like I wasn't getting parts of the arc to line up right when you're trying to build that. And it needs to be completely thought out. And I know there's going to be variation, but you shouldn't have it to the point where it just doesn't fit together. So that is sort of my issue with it. When they're designing these things, they need to be like perfect to get you that perfect version of the figure. I do love it, and I do think it's a great way to get characters that we're just not going to get because they're not going to sell certain ones. But that being said, I concede to your point, they should be packaging with characters that we don't have. We should want to get all of them, not just because we want to build a figure, because we actually care about them. And I feel like it's the same way with the Marvel Legends line. I'll look at when they're announcing something, and I don't collect Marvel Legends, but they'll have all the pieces, and one character will be with some random character that I don't think anyone's a huge fan of, but maybe like 5 people are. It's just kind of weird that they build it out that way. Does anyone else have any thoughts on that?
So mine goes to the Vintage Collection Deluxe sets, like the Luke, the Heavy Mando, the Dark Trooper. It's just when we get those figures, they put them in a box just because they say they won't fit on a bubble, but then later down the line they turn around and go, we're going to release the Dark Trooper on a card. Minus the walls, I get it. But in these sets, we're paying almost $30 for them, and we're not getting enough world building stuff inside those sets. We're getting little bitty pieces that are really don't add to the world building. It builds to a specific scene where if you can do just pieces that add to the world building aspect of it, I think that would be much better than just making it a very scene specific item.
I concur with that. Yeah, I'm all for the getting more value out of the deluxe. If it's a deluxe, even if they would need to charge, they're charging $35, charge $40. Give me a lot more world building in it. I gotta admit, particularly with the Black Series, I don't get the difference between a deluxe and a standard. Sometimes it's just the figure is slightly bigger, and he has what's that? You get extra paint. I remember sitting and hearing about Clone Commander. Oh man, it was a Gree, I think, and they talked about 42 paint applications, and I'm like, okay, like, yeah, I was like, that's great, but I don't understand. Like, I think in the end, at the end of the day, he only ended up being $20, but that was the big selling point behind him. But yeah, I think with the deluxe, like the deluxe Boba Fett. Maybe I could see that. I mean, he had a couple more. He had the blast up, the Return of the Jedi version, had the pull apart lightsaber or gun and a couple other things. But the deluxe Book of Boba Fett, it was like his accessory was blaster and helmet, and I was like, well, it should be. Like, I really didn't understand why that was deluxe. So, yes, I concede that they should definitely be doing more world building, and I'll bring that point up again.
Well, one thing I'd like to address, if you're, since you are addressing things with Hasbro, I loved the things like the Jabba's Henchman set. Mm-hmm. Great idea. Except one of the 4 figures not only was a repaint, re-release, in reuse, you already had reuse in a prior release. So
Two.
Yes, you already have him. If you, God forbid, never had one, you had an individual carded release at various points. Then you got a repaint release in a set, and then you're putting that same figure yet in another set. So you're sort of obliged to buy at least one, if not two figures you already have to get the two you want. I think that I granted tooling up for a new figure, I get it, is more expensive, but your overall sales, I think, at retail are going to be greater if you give us the value of 3 or 4 all new characters in a set, not a hodgepodge of re-releases, just to get those 2 Jabba characters you'd never see otherwise. Especially with the Cantina coming out, I think we're going to see more characters. And we certainly don't need another Greedo.
I 100% agree with you on that. Yeah, the Rias was originally released in the Black Series 3 3/4 line, repainted and packaged with the I think Jabba's Palace Adventure set, and then again repackaged for this set. So yeah, I agree that was an odd choice. My only thought would be that was done to have to throw in another character that didn't need new tooling or anything to sort of balance out the cost of the package. And you'll see Hasbro do that a lot, where they will throw something in that has already been tooled and I mean a lot to sort of recover more costs on the tooling. But I agree, it would have been stronger if we had maybe one more human character in there, or just another random Nikto or Weequay in there, just to sort of round it out. So. Hopefully, they will announce some Cantina packs like that at SDCC, and hopefully they will be all new tooled characters. I mean, I'm pretty confident we're not going to see Greedo in that pack if they're offering Greedo as part of the tiers on the Cantina. But who knows what we'll see. They did announce that we're going to be getting new versions of Luke, Obi-Wan, and Han. And I would say that I don't think they ever released those in the vintage collection in that New Hope sort of style. What we do have is those, what were they called? Sort of like ultimate versions in the original trilogy collection, where they had the vintage style packaging and the soft goods and all that, but they haven't been in the vintage collection yet. So those will be new. Again, it's the same characters, but I think in this case it's okay because we really need those guys to pull off that Cantina. Do we have any other questions or comments for Hasbro?
So sorry about the world building aspect of it. I think you're absolutely right. I think if you're releasing a Cantina, you're missing things like the Dewback, which is kind of outside. But the other missed opportunity, I think, from Hasbro's perspective, and is a question for them, is like the mini rigs. I mean, world building and going back to the yesteryear and people's affiliation with older toys. Those to me are a simple release that allows you to get a small vehicle out there that's a lower cost, doesn't take up too much space, but brings that nostalgia back. And for me, the world building aspect of Hasbro's foresight is missing. The small vehicles, animals, creatures, etc. Where is it, and why is it not forthcoming?
Those are all really good points. I actually did a video for the website on Rebel Scum Rewind on mini rigs. So I looked at all the mini rigs, and I actually discovered the mini rig line ended in 2016. I didn't know that until I went into it, but there were small single-use vehicles that weren't on the screen anywhere like mini rigs were, and it went all the way up to the Rogue One line. And they were, but they were on the Rogue One line, but they were from either Episode 1 or from Force Awakens. So they had like a little one-person walker that was only this high with a stormtrooper on it, not in the movie. They had like little mini battle tanks with one battle droid driving it. So stuff like that, they did bring it back. They had it go for a little bit, but we haven't seen any since then. But I get your point. I would love that. I would honestly love if the retro collection brought some of the mini rigs back again. I mean, that's what I was talking about when I said I think that's the next step, is we're going to see vehicles, we're going to see creatures, and maybe ones we didn't get, because I would love to get a vintage style Bantha. I think that would just look awesome with the trapdoor top when you could just push the Tuscan Raider in. I actually saw one last week. I was over at Dallas Vintage Toys, and they had one. It was a custom job, but it was just so cool. And I'm like, we need that in the vintage collection. Like, we need to have that. But mini rigs are another big thing we need to bring back. It's that nostalgia, it's that fun factor, it's a price point too, as opposed to some of the larger vehicles. But the creatures and all those mix sets, we used to get a lot of great accessory packs. That was in both the Saga line, and that continued into the, or it started in the Episode 1 line, continued in the Saga line. It actually started in 80. It was a mail away, the Hoth accessory set. So we need more accessory packs. World building, it's just a little fun. It gives you a little bit more diversity in there. It gets you some kits. I mean, those original ones in '99 had soft good robes that didn't exist on the figures yet. So it was a way to actually bring soft goods into the line. So yeah, I will definitely raise that point with Hasbro in our session. I would definitely call that play value. I think they told us at one point when Disney took over, they weren't allowed to do certain things. Like, for example, before Disney, we got Anakin Skywalker in the Black Series with 2 heads. After Disney bought the line, Hasbro said they couldn't do them for a while because they weren't allowed to do just heads. Like, all the heads had to be attached to the bodies. They could do it in their Marvel line, but they can't do it in Star Wars. I think the rules in that changed because we got Emperor Palpatine with multiple heads in that deluxe set. That was a deluxe set. I think that's how you do a deluxe set. He had the chair, he had the lightning bolts, he had different hands, he had different heads, he had his cane. That was a deluxe set. I'm happy with that. But yeah, I think the rules on that changed. So why haven't we started getting accessory sets again? So that's a great question to bring up. So minifigures or vehicles and then accessory sets, just to give you more play value.
Just on those deluxe sets, I don't understand why you can't have a deluxe set with accessories, just still a card figure. I mean, from my perspective, those deluxe sets with a sealed thing has 2 aspects in terms of concern. There's quality issues because there's missing parts. There's a load of Discord friends that have missing pieces and you can't see what's in it. And then secondly, if you are a carded collector, you want a carded figure. So why not have a carded figure encapsulated with all the accessories rather than just having a box that you end up either keeping because you're a OCD and can't not throw a box away or throw away some packaging. It's the design concept to me is just super simple, but there's no real thought process put into it.
No, I think you're right on that. Speaking of design process, we all saw the change back to the plastic windows after they went on this whole rant about the cardboard. And you're right. I mean, collectors that want to display it, they can't see it. So it kind of takes away the fun from it. Then there's my point on fun. So, yeah, I agree. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, because it was, I can't tell you about what was stolen or what was done there, but I do know that the largest complaint was, and ever since the beginning with that being announced, is with the vintage collection, the whole point was to mimic the packaging. So then they went back and said, okay, vintage, we're going to keep plastic. But then they went out and did Black Series that way, and sales dipped. And then they're like, okay, we're going back to plastic now. So I can't tell you if the sales dip was, swapping, or if it was just people didn't like the aesthetic to it. So, I mean, it's hard to connect with a product if you can't see the product. And I started the conversation off about connecting to that fandom. And if all I have is a picture, like, I'll just buy the picture. I don't need to buy a figure if I can't even see it. I don't even know if it's in there. Sort of a Schrodinger's cat situation. Like, I don't know what's in this box. It could be a rock for all I know. So it's really hard to gauge that. So I'll check on time here. We got time for a couple more questions. Anybody? Yep.
Long-time listener, first-time caller. What is the disconnect with Hasbro and the fans? If we're asking for background creatures, and in some cases demanding them, example, the Tanaka sisters, why aren't they putting these out? I mean, we'll spend the money.
So it's not a question about what you're willing to spend. It's comes down to what they're willing to spend. And with the Tanaka sisters in particular, I joined the team in 2017, been asking that question since 2017. And Hasbro said the same thing, the licensing. They just couldn't get the rights to those two. Like I don't know. There's a whole legal issue. They were constantly trying to address it. I 100% believe them when they told us that, and they finally did. I was really surprised to see that announcement. But on background aliens, and I've talked with the brand leaders like Patrick and whatnot on the team, it's a risk to them to produce background aliens because they have taken a bath on producing certain characters and they just don't move. But I think it's also the right characters. I mean, there's some like third Ugnaught from the right. Yeah, who's going to care? But there are some more, nascent or important background characters they could present. I would think anyone on a skiff would be worthwhile to produce because they had some interaction with a hero character. Someone running in the background you see for 4 seconds, maybe not. I think the biggest fear for them is they don't want another Wilro Hood incident. Apparently, he did not sell well at all. They were stuck with a lot of that character, even though there's a huge fan following for him. It just didn't sell. So Lobot, I'm told, is another one that never sells very well. But I would think he's almost in the main character sort of category. So that's what it is. It's just they're afraid to take that risk, and they don't really know. That's why we always push them for fan polls. And I'd love to push that another campaign for a fan poll to see what people want to see in terms of characters. And that's how we get that voice to Hasbro. Like you have, 10, 20, 30,000 people saying, I want this character, they'll make the character. So it's just hard for them to sort of figure that out. I think the solution might be what we see NECA do, what we see Super 7 do, and it's to do pre-orders on certain characters. Say, hey, we're going to make, this Rodan or this Jabba Palace character. We'll take pre-orders up front. You pay for it up front. It comes out next year. They're guaranteed to sell that. So that might be it's almost like doing a HasLab again, essentially. They said they didn't want to do that for individual characters. So I don't know where they could strike a happy balance. But I mean, to me, that would be the only way to guarantee that they get what the fans want and that they don't end up losing revenue on it. So it is a question of, in their minds, they don't think it's going to sell.
My question goes to
Is it on?
there. So my question is back to HasLab. We're both TVC collectors. We've backed all the HasLabs, and it's just a shame that when you watch other HasLab brands like Marvel or G.I. Joe, the excitement factor they put behind it. I mean, it's a build up to something, and then it's just everybody's all in. This year, last year they did great with the Ghost. I think they had it all thought out, but this year with the Cantina, with the leaks and everything, they were trying to push it out sooner than they wanted to, and then we waited over a whole month for the release from the date they said they were going to, and I believe it caused a downfall in the community on it because they had time to think about it instead of just get into it. We need our team to really think about it and add that excitement factor to it. Look at the Marvel team. They really know what they're talking about. Emily, Chris, they're two that really know their stuff. If we could get Stevie on there instead of just being in the background, he would be great. But like people like Gene that are just don't know what they're talking about. They're just saying, we love our product, blah, blah, blah. We need people who are really excited about it and really push it. And when they bring it out, it needs to be well thought about, well executed, and create that excitement instead of we dropped the ball, but hey, here we go. We're going to go again with it. So it needs to be well thought out.
I concur with you 100%. It gets back to my point on fun, and we're missing that fun. And I do know that the team kind of shook up a little bit. I don't think Patrick's with it anymore. Yeah, so maybe there could have been that ball dropping in the fact that people were shifting positions and things still had deadlines they had to adhere to, so it sort of got jumbled. So I can't say, and I don't know how Hasbro decides who gets on the teams or who ends up where. I just know the lines tend to shuffle people around. Some of them are passionate about the fan base and they really understand their product. Some of them are just coming in off another line or another position and they're trying to learn it. But they do listen to fans. I know it doesn't look that way all the time because you don't see that instant feedback, but things take multiple years in the pipelines to actually get to shelves. And I do give them credit for the pipeline reveals, because they're not ready to talk about it, and we're asking about it, and there's rumors out there and all things. This way, they get to tell you, we're working on this. It's not going to be out for another year or two, but this is what we are focusing on right now. It's also a chance for us to respond and be like, you need to make sure it does this, or it has this, or it's missing this, and they could tool that because they're only in the concept phase. They don't even have the computer imaging done yet. So it's our chance to get out there. And they do change things. If you remember with the barge, they made sure there was placement for the guns on top that came with the Nikto gunner. Before that even came out. So they do make adjustments. So I think there is time, if we have comments on the Cantina, that we could provide those comments to Hasbro, and they will make those little changes. They're not going to retool an entire thing, but they will make those little adjustments as best they can. So they do listen. They do take their time to do it. I mean, there are limitations to what they will do, but we do have a voice, so make sure you definitely get those messages to them. Yeah. Sure.
Where do you think it's going to end up in terms of numbers? We're lackluster in terms of 7 days. I still think we'll see the spike in terms of buyer's remorse or the fear of missing out. But where do you think the total number will end up?
I think it will get funded.
Yep.
I will be surprised if it goes past tier 1. That's where I think it's going to head. I think it was a very high goal to get 2 figures we already have in a retool and a brand new figure, but I don't know, because I knew the barge was going to get funded. I was nervous though the last 2 days, but yeah, I don't. This one is kind of weird. I'm surprised it's not funded already. So we'll see the spike. I'm pretty confident we'll get funded, but I don't think we're going to hit all 3 tiers on it. So we'll see. It was a great set, and I think when the first one was revealed, a lot of us were thinking it was either going to be the Cantina or Jabba's Palace, and it ended up being the Katana. I was very surprised that the Cantina, pleasantly surprised that the Cantina was going to be the HasLab this year. But I'm happy, really happy that we're getting away from just vehicles and starting to get into play sets. I don't know if we'll ever get a Jabba's Palace, because they already did so many, and I feel like it would be kind of a bait and switch to say, hey, here's Jabba's Palace, 2 things that you guys already paid for and we have tooled, and they're just giving us like the stairs and the entranceway and charging you $400 for it. It would be kind of weird, but who knows? We'll see what the future holds on that. But my answer is I don't have a number, but I know to get funded. I just will be surprised if it goes past, what is tier 1, 10,000? 11? I don't even know. I don't even know if it meets tier 1. We'll see.
The other thing I think that the TVC community really enjoyed, I know Black Series community wants world building, but they got to be realistic with what they've got, like the way the ship sold. But in TVC, there was a bridge between HasLab and retail, and that's what they did with the Boba Fett's throne room set. I think they need to really do more of that. Because it's not something that has to be crowdfunded. They can do the orders up front, and people are willing to do it. It don't have to be retail. We understand that shelf space is at a premium with that kind of stuff, and retailers don't want to eat the cost on it when it doesn't sell. But that kind of stuff, that would help go out to the world building a lot quicker with bigger sets instead of minimalistic things. Because we know it takes 9 months from conception to roll it out into factories on a figure. We get that, we do. But with this, we're waiting every year, every other year for a HasLab, because Black Series needs the love too. We get it. But TVC's right now, hopefully, in 8 days, we will show that we're batting 100 on HasLab. So, but the Jabba playset thing would be great if they would do more like that. Death Star 2, Emperor's Throne Room, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I agree on that. And the thing that disappoints me with the HasLab is they've never pulled off a Black Series HasLab, but they're set up to fail. I mean, their first HasLab was a big figure. And it was a great figure. I think the price point was way too high for what people would have wanted for just a figure, and the tiers were more figures. And rocks, yeah. So, and then the second Black Series HasLab was a lightsaber, And I'm like, we get those already. Just make it. Like, people will buy it. Like, and if they don't make that many. So I'm confused why they didn't do like a slightly larger vehicle. Like, I mean, they already did a land speeder. I'm not quite sure and they did a snow speeder, an X-wing maybe. Like, they did a TIE fighter, an X-wing. Yeah. So they could have did that. They could have did like a smallish playset, sort of like a larger version of Jabba's throne, something like that. For there could have been so many things they could have done that they didn't. So I'm really confused. And, I mean, they started building the Cantina bar with that special edition set. They could have just gave us a Cantina bar and just the bar and a couple. They love making some cups. So. Yeah, I don't, and then I kind of feel like because of that, they've penalized the Black Series and have not attempted any further HasLabs. So.
The other thing that they messed up on Black Series was when they had the Obi-Wan, the Cantina Showdown with Obi-Wan, Ponda and Dr. Evazan. They limited you to just one order. If you order two, you could build the whole bar. But
Yes.
you only got to build one, and you were allowed one. They need to realize what they're doing to the community when they do that kind of stuff.
The funny thing was, I was in that panel at Comic-Con where they were advertising the bar they're selling at Comic-Con, and they're like, yeah, it's a great bar. You get a couple of them and you got a set. And I'm just staring at them like, yeah, that'd be great, but we can only buy one. So how am I going to get a couple of them? You're telling me right now to get a couple of them. I know how it works, but how do I get them? I mean, I would love to just buy the bar, just sell the bar. I think someone mentioned back here about accessories missing. I have asked Hasbro this question several times. Kenner used to have a way, if you were missing a part, that you call up and get the part. I say, if I'm missing, like if a blade came off my lightsaber and I misplaced it or it broke, can I just get the blade? Like, I don't want to buy the figure again. Like, they took that into advisement, but I never heard back. But that's one of those things. Like, I think they might do it for other lines, like G.I. Joe, I think possibly, if you're missing something. But why not Hasbro? Like, lightsaber blades get lost or break all the time. Why should we have to buy another figure for $20 just to get a 10-cent blade or something? There should be a solution for that. But we're coming up on the end of our time, and I want to do giveaways because I'm pretty big on giveaway enforcement before we head out. So we got a whole bunch of people here. Let's do some. You guys are pretty advanced collectors, right? We'll do some collecting questions. All right. I love Sand Troopers. It's one of the big things I love. So here's my question. The three original pauldrons, orange, white, and black. What was the first time those were produced in an action figure? Let's keep it to Kenner and Hasbro. Give me the year and the line it was produced in.
Let's say the Power Force 2 in about 95, 96.
Okay, I'll give you one. In 96, that was the orange pauldron. All right, let's give you this lovely carbonized Death Trooper from Big Bad Toy Store, sponsoring us here. All right. The white one was way before TVC. Yeah. It was actually produced twice, really early on in the 90s. Does anyone know? Before that. Yeah.
I actually think it was in the, it was like a cardboard cantina set.
It actually was. Actually, it's a trick question. He was produced in 96 as part of the dewback. It was gray, but it was actually white. It was dirty and gray, and Hasbro messed that up, and they messed it up again in the Black Series line. But I'll give you the cardboard one there. I have this. Let's give you this Boba Fett here. It was these nice cartoon colors. Can anyone tell me when the black one was the same guy? You get that one there. The black one was produced for the first time. It was a totally different series. It wasn't Power of the Force 2. It's 2007. Does anyone know the line? I think it was it 30th anniversary? Let me double check. I mean, that was the 30th anniversary. Oh, I'm sorry. It was 2006. Saga collection. I'll give that to you. All right, we have a Kenner or the 40th anniversary Emperor's Royal Guard. I apologize, the bottom got cracked open there, so it's probably an opener. Okay, let me come up with one more question for a big giveaway. This is going to be for the Egg Attack Mandalorian and Grogu 2-pack. Do you guys familiar with Egg Attack? So this is Beast Kingdom. They do these action figures that are sort of, the heads are a little big on the body. They have some really cool features. I think this one has a magnetic jetpack that attaches to them on the back. A ton of accessories for Grogu and this little simulated hovering pram that he has there with an interchangeable head that has him eating the frog as well. So think of a really fun. Okay, what is the rare, I don't want to say rarest, but like the most obscure Boba Fett costume produced as an action figure? Even more than that, even more obscure. Even more obscure. Oh no, even more obscure than that. I know this might not be that fair because I'm thinking of a very one. Okay, there was a parade that featured the first debut of Boba Fett, and that was actually turned into an action figure, a licensed action figure, licensed. That was for the test shot. There was a county fair that he was in, was promoting the movie. Yeah, you're recalling it. Someone actually produced that as an action figure. It wasn't Hasbro. If you could just tell, nope, not General Giant. If you could tell me the line, the producer, you and this guy. Nope. Although that would make sense. It had the license from 2015-ish to about 2019. No, they still have the license. Nope. Not Gentle Giant. Kotobukiya? No. Believe it's Kotobukiya. Yeah. You could try Googling it. I didn't say you couldn't Google it. It's just going to be really hard to find it if you don't know what you're looking for. You could try to type Boba Fett County Fair and then see who made that figure. But I'll think of another question. I'll give you a minute to come up with that answer. It wasn't Galoob. I'll tell you, this company primarily produces action figures for video games. They have the Nintendo license. Jax Pacific. So they made Big Figs, and they have the most obscure action figure of Boba Fett, and it is that county fair. I forget the name of the county fair, but his armor is actually different colors. His gauntlets look more like the Kenner figure than they do like the on-screen version. You have a shot of it? Yeah. He's got it there, so you can check it out. But it was... The coloration looked very awkward. It was so niche. I remember reading an article about it in the paper. It's like the most niche Boba Fett figure ever. So I think our next panel is starting to come in. So that about wraps it for us. Thank you for joining. I don't know. I can't. Maybe he was. I can't recall. But thank you for joining us for the panel. Make sure you come back and check us out. We're going to have a huge giveaway. We're going to be giving away the Blarg from Sideshow with Kui at the closing ceremony. So be here for that, and we'll figure out how to give that away. But enjoy the rest of the day. Make sure you get over to the signers. They're still out there. They're great to talk to, interact with. I think Ross, who played Snoke, is in a movie next month on Netflix where he plays an alien. That guy only needs like a mask because his hands are really creepy if you've seen him. That's just him. That's not a prosthetic. So thank you for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day here.